You're listening to ArTEEtude, a podcast with artists created and produced by Detlef Schlich, a visual artist and ritual designer, living and loving in West Cork, and best known for his essay about the cause and effect of shamanism, art and digital culture. Working in the field of performance, photography, painting, sound, installations, and film, he will dive and discover with us and a weekly creative guest into the unknown and exciting deep ocean of the creative mind.
This is Detlef Schlich, and today we dive into the unknown and unexpected creative minds. Actually, the unexpected creative mind, or the unexpected deep ocean of the creative mind. Of Paul's mind especially, and I'm very, very happy to have him here. So we mentioned already in the first part that Paul is very skillful in his art, and he is a visionary. He's he's living art, and art is his life, and vice versa. And yeah, if you want to go back in the first part, we started to speak with him about how he was getting inspired to come over to Ireland, and we ended up in Egypt and Cairo, back to Devon, and the very dark era of the Iron Lady, Margaret Thatcher, and I mean Reagan in America as well. And Paul, he was probably suffering from that. It was in 83 something, and because he came back from a more than mañana culture, which is not Spain, which wasn't Spain. It was around Cairo and in Egypt in general, probably.
Well, my world shrank.
Yeah. Hi, Paul. First of all,
hello.
Great to have you here. Great. Paul's world shrank to which level, to which micrometer did your world shrank, Paul?
I ended up having lived my whole adult life as a traveller of one kind or another.
Yeah,
living in boats. I was more of a water gypsy than.
Yeah. Can you go a little bit closer to? Yeah,
yeah.
Lovely.
And I ended up during the 80s. I missed out all the raves and techno scene and stuff because I was living in a council house as a single parent in a Methodist community village, which didn't even have a pub.
In Devon. How many people?
Our small village on top of the moors, Exmoor.
20.
Beautiful place.
Probably, I can imagine that.
But I got very isolated.
I can imagine that.
I felt very, very isolated.
I mean, probably no, but they probably all thought you were a lunatic, you know.
They were. Most people were afraid of me, and I was wanting to fit in, but I didn't know how because I didn't know the rules, you know, of how to behave in that community. I've learned now, you know, but it was a painful way to learn.
I mean, I wouldn't say it's not everyone is capable to do the copy and paste thing, you know, towards behaviorism, isn't it?
Yeah, so I had good intentions, but sometimes I was really, put in my place and, council estates, you know, you can have your tyres slashed and things like that, and over stuff, you know, dogs and cars and things are usually the...
You get your dog slashed? No.
no, but I mean, I remember my dog knocking down a garden shed to get to a bitch on heat, and, you know, these situations.
Yeah, and
I mean... Nothing against social housing because they are communities and you all have to learn to live with each other.
Sure.
And I was I actually was lucky to get a council house in a beautiful
Sure,
place
sure.
like that.
Yeah. How long did you live in it?
7 years. Yeah. And I was doing some working with a NGO agency collecting hand tools, because it was that time, like, everybody was throwing out their
In the
hand.
early 80s, so 84,
Yes.
85 was it probably, no?
Yes, yes. And we were collecting hand tools to send to Africa. That's why I was trying to, because I'd seen the poverty. I'd seen, when a carpenter in Africa sharpens their saws until there's only half an inch of blade left.
Yeah.
And of course,
And here they throw it away.
we throw away a saw.
Yeah.
I mean, they're all pre-sharpened, and so we were collecting hand tools door to door and making up kits, like blacksmith kits and carpentry kits and
All right.
Singer sewing machine kits for different métiers.
So you sharpened them and then you sold them again.
Well, it was with an organisation called Tools for Self-Reliance. I think it's still going strong.
All right.
And
so it was a very sustainable thing, wasn't it?
It was sustainable. And I loved the ethos of solidarity
You still do it nowadays
between
as well,
working people all over the world.
Yeah.
And up to that time in my life, I hadn't really been very practical.
Yeah.
But so working on these tools, it just sort of happened naturally that I started using the tools myself and building boats. Because I caught that very dangerous, contagious disease, not COVID, but wooden boat building.
Paul, you used the word. I actually.
Sorry, we're not meant to mention that.
I don't know. I didn't promise it for the listeners in general, but I just realized that I'm not using Scooby very often. But it's okay. Yeah.
I'm talking about the boats, because I don't know. Maybe it's in our genes or something. The call of the sea.
I would say yes. I mean, if you live in Devon, sure, Paul.
And I wanted to travel again. And
so you're born in Devon, actually?
No, I was born by Irish listeners will put me on the map, because I was born by Cheltenham Racecourse in Gloucestershire. Cheltenham Racecourse, where the horse racing happens.
Like what you hear so far? Make sure you never miss a show by clicking the subscribe button now. This podcast is made possible by listeners like you. Thank you for your support. Now back to the show.
Racecourse where the horse racing happens,
All right.
But it's still in the West Country.
So you should be actually a cowboy or not a sailor.
Yeah. In another incarnation, definitely. Yeah. But no, I was sailing. I was building boats. I was sailing boats, living on boats. I got I learned. I guess I was lucky. My relationship with the sea, I guess the sea was kind to me, because it's a very rough bit of water at the entrance to the Bristol Channel by Lundy Island, where we lived, and I didn't have the proper equipment or anything. I went to sea in roadworks, waterproof gear and Wellington boots, and single-handed, mainly because I didn't have the confidence to take people along at first. I had to find out my own.
So that was the beginning of sailing, more than less, for you.
Yeah.
All right.
And so the time came when we left, and we at the time, I had an old trawler,
Yeah.
pre-war trawler.
Yeah.
You know, a real traditional wooden hull, double-ended Nordic boat.
In the 80s,
Yes,
late 80s.
yes.
All right. So now we're getting closer somehow to I get some idea a little bit. Okay. So you bought this or what?
Yes.
Was it the Esther Colleen?
Yeah, the first boat.
It wasn't. Okay. So
The first boat was a Fife Zulu boat, and then
so you had this, and you started to rehearse being a boat builder, a boat restorer somehow as well.
yeah, which is part of the course, obviously.
Yeah.
In fact, you know, it's obvious to most people that you take on a project like that, and your life's cut out. You know.
Part of the art.
But that was my foolish choice, because now looking back, I can think of lots more. You know, I could have been a doctor or.
Oh, yeah, come on. I mean, no regrets, Paul.
But yeah, and eventually, well, you know, I sailed down between the Canaries and
with this first
No, I had a lot of different boats. I built two catamarans
on your own.
on my own.
On your own?
Yeah,
No way.
in the back garden.
And you were sailing with this catamaran.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. One of them disappeared in the Pacific Ocean.
Why? Because you didn't finish it building.
No, I sold it to an Italian guy,
All right.
and it was last seen heading west out of the Panama.
With him or without him?
No, I met him years later, and he'd sold it again.
All right.
But that was a great boat.
Yeah.
And I sailed down to Portugal, Spain numerous times, and my daughter went to live with her mother and subsequently got taken into care.
Yeah.
And I was down in Portugal working on a building site on the boat.
Yeah.
And I had to come back really quick as I could with the boat. And I went through a year of court cases trying to get some custody back.
Yeah.
And by this time, she was eventually 16, and the care order was lifted, and we got out. We headed for Ireland, and it was her choice. She brought me to Ireland.
She brought you to Ireland.
She wanted to go to Skull College.
All right.
Which we visited
All right.
on trips over, you know.
Yeah, but that was still in the 90s, yeah?
No, this was 2002.
2002. But help me. So you had in the 90s, you got your. When did you get the Essocolene?
In 1999.
Okay, so you was that then at this time your only boat? I mean, probably the catamaran.
No, for my sins, I had boats all over the place. But by this time I was living on board, and my daughter chose to come with me, and we came over to West Cork, landed in Baltimore, and took it from there, you know.
Yeah.
And I ended up. There was nowhere to live. It was that.
But you landed further. Okay, you landed in Cork, didn't you?
Not this time. No, we sailed into Baltimore.
But not with the Essocolene.
Yes. And she was going to school in Skull. We couldn't find anywhere to live. It was the time of the boom, and we couldn't get our foot in the door. So we ended up on Long Island, because it was the only place we could afford.
Yeah.
And it was a savage winter.
2001.
Skull Skull Bay is fairly sheltered except from the southeast.
Yeah.
And I just remember it just came round and several times on the shipping forecast, wind southeasterly, force 11, or force 10, gusting 11.
That means how many knots is it?
That's force 11 is 100 miles an hour.
All right.
Hurricane
for the listeners. Okay, yeah.
And so there was nowhere to keep the boat,
Yeah.
because even when you're in a harbour, the swell is going up. There's this enormous swell that can be going up and down a couple of meters, and the boat weighed 65 tons, and it would burst the ropes.
Yeah, sure.
But we survived anyway. I remember like living on the island. There's no trees to speak of on Long Island because of the wind and the horizontal rain.
Yeah.
And my poor daughter, walking to school, like nearly being blown away, and then catching the ferry. And I got a job on the ferry, which was great. It was such a great introduction to West Cork life, meeting all the locals and great characters, but my daughter didn't last the winter. She went to live with my mother, her grandmother, in France.
Yeah, so she couldn't cope with all this rough Irish life.
Well, actually, she could, because she was, in some ways, she was as tough as boots, but she had the option, and I think she found it hard to fit into her new peer group. She found it.
I mean,
she was very intelligent, and she was on the spectrum. On the autistic spectrum, and it was actually in West Cork that nobody had ever heard of
at this time.
Not really, and I remember the first self-help group in Clonakilty, and I didn't know she was on that spectrum.
Yeah, sure.
I didn't. Nobody had ever told me about Asperger's, and I saw it in the local paper that there was a group, because a few people, not just once, but a few people had said to me and seen her, how she was, and they said, she could be like this.
Yeah, and it's very difficult to label people, isn't it? I mean, they just discovered things like this 20, 30 years ago, a little bit better than also new. Well,
and again, I know I was back in the 50s. I was actually identified as being autistic, because
you were identified as well,
because I didn't talk till I was 4. I was a very, very wild child, and I kind of remember my childhood as my early memories as a mystical childhood. Well, I'm sure everybody has a mystical childhood if you can go back far enough.
Sure.
But it was like it was so hard for me to come down to earth,
become a part of a society.
Exactly.
And
normal then
life, no?
The epoch I was born into, I had the usual dreams. As a schoolboy, I was sent to boarding school. And I had dreams, like to join the Navy. Perhaps fight in a war. This is these are the ideas that children are fed.
You have it.
And to me, it sounded the most exciting thing to be able to fight in a war. And I was saved from all that. Because it was about 1969. And it was all happening, the Beatles and the Stones and the Summer of Love and all that, and I latched onto all that like a magnet.
I can imagine that, you know. I mean, but this
because I didn't want the world. I didn't want to go into this boring.
No, I mean, in this post-industrial atmosphere. I mean, I'm the same, you know. I mean, I was 12. I started very early to discover art in myself, you know, and for me, it didn't work for me being a part of a society of mass production. You know, it didn't work, and it still doesn't work. I mean, even if it comes to how can I make money, I'm getting allergic against this, you know. And I think we are somehow the same. I mean, that's why we are creative and why we are artists, you know, because we love somehow this free spiritual life somehow, isn't it?
Well, the trouble is, I was much too young, much too innocent and naive, and I didn't really, and I wouldn't recommend. You know, there was very, very strong drugs around,
Sure.
and I wouldn't recommend it for any teenager.
Sure.
But I was particularly, I was already I was already a space cadet.
Yeah.
In school, I remember they said I was in cloud cuckoo land, and I was already spaced out.
Yeah.
I didn't even need drugs.
Yeah. No, me the same.
But acid.
Yeah.
Which
And that can damage. I know.
came my way,
Yeah.
and it opened my mind. It changed my life, I have to say, and I don't regard it as a recreational drug.
No. So don't try it at home, guys. It is
But it was a huge eye opener, and I had good trips and bad trips. And
Sure. I mean, they recommend it nowadays actually for software programmers in doses, in small, tiny doses, in order to become a better programmer. You know, I mean, probably not in on the way like people in the 60s used to take it, isn't it?
yeah, well, we were on the streets, you know, and
sure.
and doing it under under the carpet, you know, but. So I think I suffered maybe 20, 30 years of psychosis from that. Gradually coming back to earth, having your mind opened up to these places, these states that maybe, you know, only evolved to through a lifetime of spiritual practice.
Yeah.
And
yeah, I think Ireland is good for that, isn't it? I mean, it really settles you down.
Yes. So I was really lost as well.
Yeah.
And that led me to practicing meditation.
All right.
Which
You started here with that.
When I was 16.
Already, yeah.
I met my spiritual teacher.
Okay.
And that he's still around today, and that has saved my life so many times.
Yeah.
Learning, because, you know, in the psychedelic experience, you end up in this sea of existence. What is reality? And so it was natural to get into meditation and to explore that world of being.
Yeah.
And it's of course it's not so easy. The mind's very fickle, but through a lifetime's practice, you know, I didn't do a very good job of getting a pension and making money and all that. But I've actually feel that I've reaped the rewards of a lifetime of practice of meditation.
Absolutely. I mean, things like this. If you can make it, that if you get through all this decades of adventures and so you're probably still happy that you're still alive. Me too.
Sure.
You know? I mean, my 20s were so wild. You know, I'm so happy that I
Sure.
survived. I mean, we both have probably friends.
Sure,
who
I was
already-
lucky I didn't die on a motorbike or drowned at sea.
I mean, yeah, I can imagine that, Paul. I am as well happy that you're still alive, because otherwise we couldn't have this lovely podcast and this talk together, and we couldn't speak about this lovely experience as well, which is at the end of the day no regrets, I would say. I mean, you discovered that, which was great, and I would say we continue that in the third part. So we actually we now arrived in Ireland, and Paul is over here now in 2001 on his ferry boat. So I would say it's a good break to continue with that in the third part, and getting deeper in our creative minds. Paul,
Thank you.
I thank you very much for having you in my show, and I'm looking forward for the next part.
Very good.
Have a lovely day. Bye.
Ciao.
Ciao.
This is a listener-supported show. I feel honored if you subscribe this show. You can follow me non-financial with a following click on one of my Instagram accounts, or subscribe the visual version of this podcast on YouTube via the link below. If you like what you hear, be sure to tune in this Sunday for the third part of this ArTEEtude audio triptych. If you want to leave a donation for a coffee or a bus ticket, just follow the donation link via the ArTEEtude podcast account. Eventually, I would like to thank, through this medium, all my members and listeners of the I Love West Cork Artists Network from all over the world. Just to remember myself that without you, this here couldn't and wouldn't happen.
You have listened to ArTEEtude, West Cork's first art, fashion and design podcast. ArTEEtude, never so close again. That was too close.